In a lot of ancient cultures, the king was the source of fertility. The king had a special connection to the gods. In some cultures, the king was considered to be an incarnation of sorts of the god. And as long as the king was healthy and long the king was strong, that meant fertility and productivity and fruitfulness for the entire kingdom. But there's a section of the book of Kings that indicates that that is, in fact, false. There's a kind of parody of that vision of fertile kingship in the reign of Ahab. Ahab is a paganized king of the northern kingdom. He's married to Jezebel, and he's adopted the ways of the kings of the nations. He worships Baal, who is a fertility god, and he surely thinks of himself as a source of fertility for the land. But the land is not fertile during the reign of Ahab. Ahab sends out Obadiah to look for little patches of green in his kingdom so that he can pasture his flocks and his other animals. And Ahab is not a source of fertility, but he's actually a source of the drought and the desertification of the northern kingdom. It's because of Ahab's rebellion that the Lord sends this drought and judges Israel for Ahab's sins. But there is a source of fertility in the northern kingdom during this time. Yahweh, of course, is the ultimate source of fertility, but his power works through the prophets, Elijah and Elisha. And their fertility and their fruitfulness is shown in the fact that wherever they go, there is a meal. When Elijah goes out of the land into the wilderness, ravens bring food to him, and the brook that runs through the land continues to run as long as Elijah needs it. Once the brook dries up, he goes on to Zarephath. It's during a drought, and the widow of Zarephath has nothing but one last meal that she's fixing. But because of Elijah's presence, her flour and her oil don't run out, and she can feed not only herself and her son, but also Elijah for a long time. Elijah keeps doing food miracles. He keeps doing miracles of fertility, and that's even more so the case with Elisha. Elisha, who succeeds Elijah, does the same kind of miracles. Elisha also has a widow that he saves by providing an overabundance of oil. Elisha actually does a miracle like the miracle of Jesus. He feeds 100 men with 20 barley loaves. At one point, Elisha prophesies the salvation of Samaria, the capital of the northern kingdom, and he prophesies that there will be an abundance of food that come into Samaria. Samaria is in the midst of a famine. Samaria is in the midst of a drought. And yet he says that the city is going to be saved and there's going to be plenty of food for everyone. The prices of food will drop dramatically because there's going to be abundance of food, and the Lord arranges things so that actually happens. Even when kings don't provide fertility, prophets do. And if you want to have a life of abundance, if you want to have food, if you want to eat at the Lord's table, then you need to stick to the prophet. And of course, Jesus is the great prophet of Israel. He's a prophet mighty in word and deed. He does food miracles constantly. He comes inviting people to a feast. He comes eating and drinking and feasting. And wherever he goes, there's fertility and life. He's the greater Elijah. He's the greater Elisha. And if we want to have fertility and liveliness and fruitfulness in life, we need to be at the table of this great prophet.